Welcome everybody to the MMA Cyber Threat Protection Program webinar. Sorry for the slight delay. We had some technical difficulties. We're going to get started here in just about 10 seconds. But I'm Mike Maddox. I'm the CEO of ASK, and I want to thank you for being with us today and for joining the webinar. Again, I want to apologize for the slight delay. We had a technical difficulty with the microphone. Nobody could hear me. I was here and ready to talk, but there was no volume. So my apologies for that. And with that, I'm very excited to be with you today, and I'm very excited to talk about the Michigan Manufacturers Association Cyber Threat Protection Program, joint program put together by ASK and the Michigan Manufacturers Association, specifically designed for manufacturing entities and members of the organization in Michigan. And we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation here that kind of describes the program and also gives some background on how we got to the point of offering the program and why we're offering it and what it might mean for you as a manufacturer in the state. Right now, all mics are muted except for mine, hopefully. Mine was muted, but it's no longer muted. We are monitoring chat, so if you have questions, please submit those via the chat function, and we will get those questions answered at the end. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the material. So the reason that this program was put together is that the technology landscape in Michigan has changed, and a number of things have driven that, especially in the manufacturing industry. These are things that you're aware of, I'm sure, but just to kind of put them on one slide and give you some background as to what we're seeing, the Internet of Things has dramatically changed everything. Connected devices on the production floor, connected devices within the manufacturing environment, even within our homes. I mean, we now have thermostats in our homes that are connected to the internet. Our refrigerators are connected, and in manufacturing, we're using that same technology to create efficiencies and to drive competitive advantage. Industry 4.0, to use a buzzword, lights out manufacturing, robotics, AI, all the things associated with that, remote devices, and that's in every industry, but manufacturing is certainly no exception. The employees, staff members are all bringing their own devices in through cell phones, tablets. Many of us are still working or are working at home from those devices on a regular basis. That's changed the landscape as well. And organized cybercrime growth. We've seen with our security department here, our enhanced security team at ASK, and the industry has seen an explosion of what we call organized cybercrime. It's no longer like it was in the early days where it was independent, maybe teenagers in their parents' basement conducting these things. These are very well organized and funded groups. Dependence on technology is critical for the manufacturing industry and really all industries. But the dependence on technology is what is giving manufacturers in today's day and age a competitive advantage in allowing for efficiencies and allowing you to move faster. That's also led to the explosion of data volumes within the environment. So that landscape, all those things taken together, has dramatically changed the landscape in general and has created an attack surface, if you will, or a vulnerability for manufacturers that didn't exist before. So if we look back and kind of look at how we've progressed, from an IT standpoint, the things that we are using to combat cybercrime are still necessary and important, but they're no longer sufficient on their own. And what I mean by that from a technology standpoint is your basic firewall protection, antivirus, anti-malware, email and web protection. Those are the typical items of defense that are used, and we see this all the time in businesses of all industries types, but especially in manufacturing, that those are what's being counted on to protect the entity. And really, that's a protection mechanism that goes back to like the year 2000, when that was the standard. We met with companies in that era, and we did recommend that you have solid antivirus, you have a solid firewall, you do some patching. Microsoft and other software vendors will come out regularly with patches for their software that are geared to close known vulnerabilities that they've discovered, ways for bad guys to get in, and that you do that patching on a somewhat regular basis, and that you have a firewall and backups. Even back in the year 2000, we were talking about backups. Usually it was file level backup, meaning that you'd have some kind of backup software and you would go in, select what the important files were, what your important data is, and you'd back that up selectively. Really no testing around that, typically no offsite. Many times it was done to tape. ASK's heritage goes back to the old IBM mainframe days, and so tape was very common in many of our customer environments. But my point on this slide is that was very sufficient back in 2000. As time moved forward and technology progressed and cybercrime progressed, we got into like the year 2010, and we added a few things to what was considered standard necessary defense. Things like logging, understanding what is on your servers and what is in your environment, in your network, and being able to track actions within that environment. Endpoint protection became important. Most important, block level patching, or I'm sorry, block level backup, I should say, became the standard. And we started to talk about things like recovery point objective and recovery time objective. If you were to have a catastrophic failure, how long could your business stand to be down before you were back in production? That's a recovery time objective. How much data could you lose, if any? That's a recovery point objective. It is different for all businesses, but we began to look at that stuff, and that led to technologies like offsite backups, verification of your backup. And by verification, I mean knowing that not only do we have the data backed up on site and offsite, but we can take that data and we can recover in a timely fashion that meets our recovery time objective, and we can get the data back meeting our recovery point objective. So those were technologies that got introduced around that era. Patch management became important because the frequency of patches became much higher. And with patching your systems, whenever a software vendor, Microsoft predominantly, but all software vendors issue a patch, as many of you know, just blindly rolling those patches out would break many things. So it became increasingly important to vet those patches and benchmark them and test them and utilize them or deploy them with some intelligence behind the deployment. Dedicated firewalls, no longer consumer grade, and we saw an explosion in the firewall market. And domain management, understanding where your users are, what they have access to, what they don't have access to, and putting some process and rights around that through the use of domains. That was 2010. And all of those solutions back then are typically what we still see today. That's a common environment from an IT or technology perspective. And those are all, as I said before, very necessary solutions, but they're not sufficient on their own. And it's mainly because they are very reactive in nature. They're all geared to take effect if and when something happens to your environment, if and when malware or ransomware or a breach occurs. They're reactive to that event. And what's needed in today's environment is a much more proactive solution for cybersecurity. So that involves many things. Cybersecurity is technology, so there is a technology component, but it starts first and foremost with policies and processes. Understanding your from a business perspective, what the nature of the risk is, what your risk tolerance is, how much protection you want to put in. There's a continuum within cybersecurity protection whereby the more cybersecurity protection you have as an entity, the less flexibility you may have. So there's a give and take and a trade-off there. And so that's why it starts with understanding the policies and the procedures and the risk tolerance within the environment. SOC and SIM are technologies that are very proactive in nature, and we're going to talk about that. If you aren't familiar with those terms, in very basic language, a SIM is a supercomputer or a bank of supercomputers that has the ability to take massive amounts of data, digest it, condense it, and put it into a much more manageable set, a smaller set that can be acted on and analyzed by a SOC. A SOC is a team of security experts, threat hunters. A SOC stands for Security Operations Center. So those technologies become very important in this day and age, very proactive in nature and very real time. Endpoint detection is still very important in today's day and age, and having proactive tools at the edge of your network, on the cell phones, on the tablets, on remote users' devices, on home computers if they're accessing the network, important to protecting the environment. Patch management, we've already talked about, and block level. Backups, still important. Dedicated firewalls and domain management remain critically important in today's day and age. So what we're adding are policies, procedures, understanding of the business tolerance, SOC, SIM, and endpoint detection. To take one step back, all industries do face this risk. Manufacturing is actually the second highest targeted industry, and we'll talk about that. But it is a threat that all businesses and every industry face. The average cost of a breach for a manufacturer in the U.S. is now approaching $8 million. That's a staggering number. Now that's a dollar value that's calculated across all, companies of all sizes. But needless to say, the numbers are rising, and the costs of the breach are getting higher and higher. On average, even more frightening to me is on average, it takes companies like 197 days to identify a data breach. And that's in every industry. Cyber criminals will get into an environment and typically wait for months before they take action on what they've been able to get into. They're looking for the best way to attack. They're in the environment looking to see, is it data that they want to steal? Is it your customers? Is it personal identifiable information that they want access to? Is it money, through ransomware? But they're very patient. And so we see that number being very consistent. And even more frightening than that is that, and this number has been consistent for many years now, 60% or so of businesses that experience a major attack will go out of business within 6 months if they don't have the tools in place to prevent that attack. So manufacturers are highly targeted. This is something that was recognized by the Michigan Manufacturers Association early on when we began to work with them. Chuck Haddon, recently retired president of the MMA, knew that he and his team needed to provide assistance to MMA members in this area, that perhaps there was no higher priority for them as a industry group than to help their membership find an affordable way to proactively fight cybercrime. He began to work with ASK on this solution mainly because of our ability to handle companies of all sizes. Our heritage goes back, as I mentioned earlier, to the old mainframe days. 1993 is when we got our start. And we have worked in environments of all sizes, from large, international companies with a very wide footprint down to small single entities with one location. And so he approached us to put this program together, and we did that jointly with the MMA, and we're going to explain what's involved in the program in the upcoming slides. Most important, I think, talking to Chuck, is something he said during the process, is that we recognize you can't stop every attack And that might be the scariest thing about cyber threats. And more than that, any single attack could be the one that puts a business out of business. And we had another CEO that was part of the planning for this company out of Grand Rapids who asked the following question during our meeting: can my business literally be taken down by a single employee clicking on the wrong link or opening the wrong attachment? And the answer to that question is yes. And that's truly frightening. So that led us to put together the MMA Cyber Threat Protection Program. Phil Sponsler is the CEO of Orbit Form Corporation in Jackson, Michigan. If many of you may know Phil, he won the prestigious Manufacturer of the Year Award in 2017 from the MMA. And Phil is a great example of a company that recognized that he could not afford to sit by and accept the risk as it was, and took proactive action. And Phil talks in his public appearances about a number of times where they've been attacked since implementing proactive cybersecurity protection, and how without the protection in place, it could have cost them their business. And so he is a very willing spokesperson for this program. Some of the reasons why manufacturing is the second most highly targeted industry. I mentioned before the use of technology. Manufacturing, more than any other industry, is adopting technology into their processes and into their production as a way to not only stay competitive, but to get ahead of the competition and to become efficient and reduce constraints. Industry 4.0 is certainly driving a lot of that. And there's a lot of data in a manufacturing environment. CAD, CAM processes, manufacturing processes in general lead to large data files and a lot of data that goes into the engineering and manufacturing of product. And also, finance is the #1 targeted industry, but finance by and large has been addressing cybersecurity for a number of years now. And the cyber criminals know that. So they're going to go where the attacking is easier. And so instead of going after a large financial institution that may have a lot of proactive cybersecurity protection in place, it's much easier for them to attack an industry that may not have the same tools at their disposal. A little bit more about ASK. I mentioned that we were founded in 1993. Manufacturing has always been our main industry. Being a Michigan-based company in Lansing, and from our early days dealing with mainframe technology, the AS400 and other mainframe type technologies, led us naturally into manufacturing. So this has been an industry that we've known and loved and been a part of for 27 years now. We specialize in cybersecurity, business consulting, and IT management. For those of you that don't know where we're located, we recently moved into our new headquarters, which is a old elementary school in Riotown, Lansing. We're very proud to be a part of the revitalization of that part of the Lansing community, 30,000 square foot building that serves as our home. And we have a distinct team that only works on cybersecurity. And that's unique in the industry, in that every IT provider on the planet touts cybersecurity as their specialty because that's where they feel the money is, but very few have a team that is certified and credentialed in everything from front-end assessments to back-end forensics, and can offer this set of tools that I believe we're able to offer through the MMA Cyber Threat Protection Program. We have a process that's been developed and honed over many years of doing business with clients that starts with discovery. Everything that we do at ASK is based on understanding the business needs first. So we start at the discovery stage. We believe that technology tools on their own have no intrinsic value for a business. Their value only is derived from their ability to help a company either increase profits, reduce inefficiency, protect the environment from cyber threat, and they need to have an ROI associated with them. So that's why everything we do starts on the business side. We go through an assessment process with new clients that gets much more deeper into what is the current infrastructure, once we understand the business, what's the current infrastructure? Does it support the business needs? Are there gaps? Are there places where we can be of assistance or ways that we can help? And if there are, we go through onboarding. Once an ASK client is onboarded, there's a continual cycle that we run through from identifying pain points, understanding the business strategy. What are the goals of the business? What are the drivers? Is there technology that can support those drivers and alleviate the pain points? If they are, they're roadmapped because we understand that you can't do everything at once. There are budget constraints, so a budgeting process is put together. Of course, implementation, and biggest of all, of course, is being able to measure and articulate the ROI associated with any solution we recommend. This is a continuous cycle that our clients go through on a regular basis, and most of our personnel are customer-facing engineers and client technology managers that work with our customers on a regular basis to run this process. All of it is built on what we call the 3 pillars of technology. And we're going to touch on each of those pillars in the next couple of slides, but this is the foundation of everything we do. And we strongly believe that no business today is taking care of the risk and putting themselves in a position to succeed if they don't have all 3 pillars of technology in place. And what we see often is that most companies have 2 of the 3, and you'll see that on the upcoming slide. So what are the 3 pillars? The first is managed IT services, or another way of saying that is comprehensive and proactive IT management. That can be done in-house with an IT team, or it can be done through a managed IT provider like ASK does that. There are others that do it as well, or it can be a combination of the 2. But somebody has to be responsible for 24/7 monitoring of the environment and remediation of problems. The use and dependence on technology is far too great just to leave it to its own devices. We all know that technology moves toward failure on a regular basis. That's what it does. So somebody has to monitor that and remediate problems as they come up. Patch management, I've talked about already. Critically important that they get tested. And now patching is a continual process. Patching used to be an intermittent thing that happened every so often, or on a certain day of the month or a certain day of the week. Patching is regular now because of the advancement in cyber threat. Remote monitoring and management, and you can see the rest of the bullets here: content filtering, antivirus, road mapping and planning, asset management, policy management. These are all things that are considered the IT function, and they have to be done, and they have to be done well. And that's what we call the first pillar. The second pillar is high availability and disaster recovery. And this is an area I touched on earlier in the presentation, having on-site and off-site validated backups. So understanding what your recovery point objective is and your recovery time objective, then putting in place technology that allows you to meet those. If something were to physically happen to the environment, the physical environment, how are you going to operate? Where are you going to get your data from? That's what led to offsite backups. Validating those, making sure that they're encrypted so that they can't be stolen. So when data is in transmission to an offsite facility, is it encrypted? Is it safe? Is it block level? Are we capturing all of the data and the operating system and the image of our technology so that we can get back in production as quickly as possible in the event of a disaster? And virtualization. Virtualization in the backup world simply means that you can take a backup device and temporarily use it as a production server should something happen to your main server environment. That's the second pillar. Those are critical, and as I mentioned earlier, both pillar 1 and pillar 2 we see in most environments. Sometimes they have to be enhanced a little bit, but those are very common. The one that's usually missing is the proactive cybersecurity pillar. And it involves many things that I touched on earlier and that are listed here on this slide. And I will get into that in a little more detail in the next couple slides. So cybersecurity, as I mentioned, involves having all the three pillars in place. Having the proactive care or total care, those are ASK solutions. Those are branded terms that we use. But again, good IT management can be done either in-house or with a provider like ASK, or a combination of the two, but it has to be done. Having solid backup and rapid recovery. Again, those are by and large technology functions. Solution consulting. And when you get into the enhanced security services, this is a little different. This is not what I would call an IT function. Too often it is relegated to the IT department because it seems like it fits. It seems like cybersecurity would be an IT function, but it involves, as I mentioned earlier, way more than that. It involves policies and procedures and limiting flexibility often, educating the user base. The human being is still the weakest point in any solution that you put in place. So because it's so much larger than that, and because it's an ever-changing landscape, it's really a different skill set. I see that firsthand here at ASK regularly because we do have two very distinct teams. We have cybersecurity experts and we have technology experts, and they are different. They have different skill sets, they have different training, they have different certifications. On the cybersecurity side, it's very much real time. The threat landscape changes so fast that if you're not doing that full time, you really can't stay on top of things. We have two products that we offer under the MMA Cyber Threat Protection Program. One is called Detect and Respond, and one is called Live Security Monitoring. And I'll touch on each of those in the next couple of slides. So Detect and Respond is a good entry-level product for companies that are looking to start their cybersecurity protection. If there is no proactive cybersecurity protection in place, this is ideal as a starting point. It focuses on making sure that every endpoint in the environment has protection on it that allows for a security operations center engineer to take action in the event that malware, ransomware, or some other threat gets into that endpoint. It doesn't matter if that endpoint is in the corporate office or traveling remotely. It's based on endpoint technology. It's ideal, as I said, for businesses that are looking to take that next step in their security posture, especially businesses that have a mobile workforce. If you have a lot of traveling users, if you're largely a mobile entity, Detect and Respond is really ideal for that. The other product is called Live Security Monitoring. Live Security Monitoring is a more comprehensive type solution that literally monitors the entire environment and captures every bit of data that's going in and out of the environment real time, uses a SIM, which I mentioned earlier, so it sends all of that data up to a supercomputer that's able to run heuristics and AI and algorithms and spit out a digestible or manageable data set that the Security Operations Center team can analyze in real time and take action on. With live security monitoring, there are also other benefits that you get, like logging, which basically means it's not only capturing all the data coming in and out of the environment, it's capturing all the data that is already in the environment, everything that's on the servers and in the network, in your email environment, your cloud environment. So instead of sitting on the endpoints of your environment and protecting the endpoints, it's protecting the entire attack surface, if you will. It's ideal for clients that are looking to protect the entire network. Don't have a staff of security professionals, because one of the added benefits is the ASK team of enhanced cybersecurity professionals that work with you and your staff to do things like user education sessions, phishing campaigns, where we will launch a phishing campaign and track how many people clicked on the link that they shouldn't have clicked on, and then we provide further education based on that. helping users understand the importance of adopting a cybersecurity culture. So it's ideal for companies that don't have anybody in cybersecurity and are looking for a complete comprehensive solution. Which of the two solutions are best for your business is really something that takes more conversation than we could have on a webinar, and that's what our consultants are there for. They can guide you through the questions and help you determine which would be most appropriate, or both. I should mention that they're not exclusive products. Many of our clients run both, including ASK. We run both internally as well, and they do complement each other. There are some additional benefits that you get with the Michigan Manufacturers Association because of your membership in their association. Customized reporting, baselining. We want to understand where your company is today, and we want to understand where it is 3 months from now and 6 months from now. So we're constantly baselining the environment to make sure that we are staying ahead of the ever-evolving and changing threat landscape. Log correlation, I talked about that. Incident response, of course, in the event that something happens. And there is a discounted pricing program because of your membership in MMA. So what we normally offer these solutions at is greatly discounted through the MMA program. And some of the other benefits are listed on the right-hand side of the slide here. Risk assessments, something that we do not only at the front end when we first start working with a company, but on an ongoing basis because of what I mentioned earlier. We want to understand the progression and that we are becoming more secure over time and that we are staying ahead of the threat landscape. The risk assessment that we do is a very in-depth, everything from physical security at the front end through data security on the back end. We look at everything we can. So we look at the entity as a whole, not just the technology piece of it. Of course, I mentioned targeted phishing campaigns, password audits. Password policies are really hard to implement, and they're hard to manage, but they are critical in today's day and age. And our team will work with you to implement a password policy and the tools necessary and the user education that goes along with that to successfully get that implemented. So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we wanted to present. We wanted to give you a real high level of what's available through the MMA. I'm really excited about this program. We've had a lot of interest from manufacturers all over the state in the cyber threat protection program, mainly because the solution set that we talked about is offered at price levels that are very affordable for mid-sized, small and mid-sized businesses. The technology that I covered today in either one of our products, either detect and respond or live security monitoring, is technology that was available in years past, but the two primary providers, IBM and Dell, were really only targeting Fortune 50, Fortune 100 size companies. The price tag that went along with their solution set was hundreds of thousands, 800,000, 900,000, $1 million a year. And that's way outside the budget of a small mid-sized company. What we're talking about in our two solutions offered through the MMA is nowhere near that ballpark. Much more affordable and much more budgetable for really a business of any size. So we're excited about it. We hope that we gave you at least a high-level view of it. If you're interested in talking further, you can contact me. My email is on the slide in front of you, and my phone number is as well. And that's my direct line. Kevin Meeker, who's been lurking in the background of this presentation and collecting your questions, is also available anytime. His email and phone number, direct line, are on the slide in front of you. So with that, we'd be glad to take some questions. And I think Kevin is going to jump in and actually, I'm going to read the questions. He's telling me. So we've had quite a few, and we'll try to hit as many as we can and answer them as best as we can. The first question is submitted, says, I am a small employer. I have under 20 employees, and I'm at great risk. The question is, am I let me say this another way. do I have as much risk as a larger company? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. The thing about cyber criminals is, and cybercrime, is they really don't care how big or small the entity is. And the reason for that is they travel at the speed of light. So it's the analogy I like to draw is it's not like the home burglar that's breaking into a home in the neighborhood and goes about his business by choosing the largest, nicest home that he thinks he can get into. A cyber criminal can hit every home, and they can do it in the blink of an eye, and they can look for every open window and every open door. And so we're seeing actually the attacks on small business be as large as those on large multinational enterprises. In fact, we're seeing probably more attacks on small business because cyber criminals also know that they're not likely to have as much data protection and cybersecurity protection as a larger entity. Another question that came up is that what is your favorite part of the MMA cyber threat protection program and why? My favorite part is that it's affordable. In fact, this is priced out, and it varies by company. So I can't give you a price point, and I can't give you a price, list. It's not based on that. It's based on your infrastructure, your size, the number of users, how many servers you have, how much cybersecurity consulting goes into it. But regardless of how much of it you use, it's priced at a price point that is very affordable for a business of any size. In fact, in most cases, the reaction we get in working with clients is, I don't know how we can afford not to do this. And they're right about that. Kevin, you got another question here you point out for me? We have an IT person in-house. Is this program relevant to us, or are we okay because of our in-house IT staff? And that goes back to something I mentioned earlier, and we're going to actually be presenting at the upcoming Michigan Manufacturers Association conference on March 12th, their Operational Excellence Conference. The title of our presentation is Why Cybersecurity Protection is a Leadership Level Responsibility. Technology and cybersecurity are two different things. Cybersecurity involves technology for sure, but it starts with business process, business strategy, understanding your disaster recovery plan, understanding your risk tolerance, implementing policies and procedures that have to be adopted corporate wide. And that's often impossible for an IT department. And then on top of that, internal IT departments have way more than enough to do already. Just staying on top of the infrastructure, the explosion of data, managing that data, managing user issues, proactively monitoring the environment, remediating problems. That is IT management, and that is more than a full-time job. And the skill sets are different. As I mentioned earlier, a cybersecurity trained person has a completely different set of skills than a typical network admin. Kevin's pointing out another question here. We're a mid-sized business. How do we deploy a cybersecurity strategy? Does it start with the CEO or IT? And the answer to that is, that's a great question. I appreciate whoever submitted that. It absolutely starts with the CEO. Cybersecurity is a CEO and a leader level responsibility, and it has to be driven from the top because of the changes that are needed within the organization. And it certainly involves IT. IT's got to be a critical part of it, but it starts at the top and it has to be adopted enterprise-wide. As far as how you get started, I would suggest an assessment get done, and that's my suggestion for a business of any size, that you engage ASK, or if you have another provider that has cybersecurity expertise, reach out to them and get an external assessment done so you understand what your risk is today and what your posture is today. Another question, we have time for just a couple more here, I believe. It looks like manufacturers are more heavily at risk. Should we rethink investing in new tech if it just opens more ways for criminals to attack us? That's a great question. The more technology you implement, the more at risk you have, the more at risk you are, for sure. And I think the dilemma that is faced by manufacturers of all sizes is, if you don't implement the technology and some of the improvements and some of the efficiencies that come with it, can you stay competitive? And of course, that depends on who you're competing with and how you go to market and what your business strategy is. But in most cases, the advantages of implementing technology outweigh the risk if you implement a proactive cybersecurity protection program. And that's not that much different really than any other industry. I mean, we're seeing this in all industries, that the dependence on technology and the use of technology to become more efficient and to become more competitive and to become more profitable is happening in every industry. I just think it's happening faster in manufacturing. So every industry needs to face the same dilemma. Two more here, Kevin's telling me. How does ASK work with internal IT staff? What does that partnering look like? Is there staff training options? Yeah, absolutely. About 95% of ASK clients have internal IT staff, probably even higher than that now. We work very closely with that IT department. And what we always find is that the IT department wants to address cybersecurity, but they know they don't have the ability to do it on their own. They know they don't have the internal skills. They also don't have the time, and they don't have the tools, and they don't have the ability to change the entire culture of the company. So that's where we come in and partner with them and partner with the executives to make those changes. Last question, I believe, Kevin. What if we sign up for the program and still get attacked? I see preventative benefits, but what about after the fact, after the attack help? Absolutely. No solution, and I should have probably said this earlier, but no solution is 100% guarantee against cyber attack. What we're talking about is mitigation of risk. And the programs that we've offered through the MMA, I am confident through experience, through real life experience with customers, provide you with a greatly enhanced risk mitigation. Take companies from, make them 95% better than they are today. But you can't eliminate all of it. I guess the only way you could eliminate all of it is just disconnect all technology, which goes back to an earlier question, which has its own set of problems. But to answer the question more directly, if there is an attack, our team is ready and capable and poised to help remediate that attack, stop the attack, do the forensics on it, and get you back in business as fast as possible. And some of our solutions come with some monetary guarantees with them as well. The details of that are too complex to get into on the call, but the short answer is absolutely. We're very capable, and our team spends a good part of their day working with clients to help them remediate things that have occurred. Many clients that don't have our protection program. Anything else, Kevin? If not, I want to thank everybody for your time today. I'm so glad you chose to join this. Again, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to talk to you one-on-one, even if you just have questions. Not looking to put a heavy sell on anyone. We're looking to educate as much as we can. Our commitment to the manufacturing industry is strong. We're proud of it. We're proud of this program with the MMA, and we very much appreciate your time today.